So, anyway, so has anybody been winter camping in the snow before?
No.
We made a cave, but we didn't actually sleep in it.
I went, set up a tent in the snow.
Yeah. So those of you who haven't done it before, they encourage you to actually build a snow shelter. And those of us that have done it before, we usually just help the kids build the shelter. And also, if any adults don't want to spend the night in the snow, but actually would like to come help build shelters, there's always a need for that. One year I went up, I didn't have any kids that I had to worry about, so I just went up and helped them build the shelter, and then I went down and slept in my bed, so. If my daughter wasn't going, I would probably do that again, because the weekend after that, I'm going winter camping with my search and rescue team, and so winter camping's okay, but I don't tend to get a lot of sleep when I'm out there, and so, it's not something I care if I do multiple times a winter like some people. So, before we get into the gear, the one thing I wanted to talk about is some of the aspects of winter camping, what you're up against versus just backpacking in the summer. And in the winter, like if you sleep in a snow cave or a shelter, that you made out of blocks and stuff like that, you're basically sleeping in cold weather and you're sleeping surrounded by water. And so nature is already stacked against you a little bit on the situation that is put in, because the most important things about being out in the winter are staying warm and staying dry. And so if you're surrounded by water and it's cold out, you're combating those two elements the entire time you're out there. And so the important thing that you want to remember now, how many have heard that the term cotton kills? Anybody heard that term?
Yeah.
So in the Pacific Northwest, that's especially true. Sometimes you'll get some guy that grew up on a ranch in Montana, and he'll be like, I wear jeans in 20 below zero, and I never had a problem. In Montana, the air is sucking the moisture out of you and your clothes. In the Northwest, the atmosphere is pushing water into your clothing and into you. And so it's a different environment in the Northwest than it is, in a lot of other parts of the country. And so wearing blue jeans, snow camping, and things like that, they just suck the moisture out. And I don't know how many of you have been out on a 90-degree day and gone swimming in a pair of cut-off jeans before, and then got out. How many hours did it take in 90-degree weather for those jeans to dry out? I mean, it takes 2 hours in hot weather, it seems like, to dry jeans out, when they're wet. So we don't want people wearing cotton clothing like this is cotton. These are synthetic. You want to wear wool or synthetic clothing when you're out in the woods. And so winter camping. And so, and then the other aspect of it is, a lot of times we go out in the snow, we have snowball fights and play and get wet and snow, and we're going to go home, get in the car and leave, and so it's not a big deal. That's what we do. But when you're winter camping, you want to save the snowball fights and the goofing around and getting wet for the day you leave. Yeah, when you're heading out, not the day you go in. You want to protect all of your gear and all your clothes. Now, I'm hoping that it's not raining, when we go out there. The year that I went out and I didn't stay out, it was pouring down rain, and so these poor people were out there digging shelters in the rain and everything. And if that is the case, you want to have everything, that you take your pack off, it goes in a tarp or a garbage bag or something, but you want to keep that stuff dry. You don't want to expose it to the rain. And the other thing that's good is if you can have what I call a sacrificial pair of clothes to build your shelter in, and it gets all wet, and then you change into dry clothes, and then you just throw those wet clothes in the garbage bag, carry them out, and you take one, put them in the dryer because they're probably not going to dry out, And so, so having multiple pairs of things is important. So Anyway, I'll start with the list. So one thing you're gonna want is some sort of a backpack. You know, here's an example of a backpack, but some kind of a backpack that you can hold your sleeping bag and your sleeping pad, all that kind of stuff in there, you know, for the weekend. How many people have gone? I know that Salisbury's done a lot of backpacking. Have you guys done any backpacking like summer? Yeah, okay. So basically you carry everything, when you go backpacking, you carry everything you're gonna need on your back. But in the winter, it's the same thing except for just a whole lot more because you got all this heavier coats and things like that you don't have, you know, when you're summer backpacking. So the good news is we typically on these trips only go about 30 to 45 minutes out and away from the parking lot. And so it's not like you're having to lug, you know, a 70-pound pack, you know, for miles and miles, you know. Some people do that, but you know, it is, you know, if you're used to lightweight backpacking with a 30-pound pack in the summer, you know, you're probably gonna have like at least a 45-pound pack in the winter, you know, is basically what you're gonna amount to. We've also got backpacking tent, but that's just if you're not gonna be sleeping in a shelter, which most of you kids will be sleeping in a shelter. So, let's see, I like to also, I got one in here. So when I'm sleeping in a shelter, some people like to sleep in a bivy sack inside of a shelter, snow shelter. And if you've got one and you want to try it, that's fine. But I found that my bivy sacks always create condensation and the sleeping bag's pretty wet. You're only going to be out there one night, and my philosophy with bivy sacks is they're like one night, unless you've got a lot of time, like I backpacked with them once for a weekend. Unless you have time to turn them inside out, hang them from a tree, and have a couple hours to let them dry in the morning while you're cooking breakfast, they get wet inside, your sleeping bag gets wet, and so they're like, I like them as an emergency shelter. I don't like them for like regular sleeping. So what I like to do is have one of these inexpensive space blanket tarps, and you just lay it down on the ground under you, and most of you will probably be having at least 2 of you in a cave or a snow shelter. So you lay it down under your sleeping bags, and you put your pad down. Now, for most of you kids, this would be fine. This kind of a pad would be great for like summer backpacking, because you know, when I was a kid, I used to sleep on the ground and I was fine. But these are a little bit more comfortable than just sleeping on the ground. But the thing you want when you're winter camping is you want insulation, and preferably like an R factor of 4 to 4.5, which is now a thermarest like this, the Z-Lite, has about 2, an R factor of 2. So if you have 2 foam pads and you put one on top of another, then you got enough insulation. You can survive on something like that, but you're going to be cold. And so I'd recommend having either 2 foam pads, or if you have a thermarest that's got more of an R factor, look up at what the R factor is. Not all air mattresses have insulation, and then some have less than others. And so some air mattresses are built for winter camping, and they have down or synthetic insulation in them. Others are just plain old air mattresses, and they have no insulation. And if it's got no insulation, your body heat will just get sucked out into the cold air, because you'll warm it a little bit, but it's going to be just pulling air out of you, or heat out of you. So space blanket tarp, camera would be optional, or cell phone. Now, winter camping, for all the girls that are tomboys and all of the guys that like something like that, the winter camping is a great time to bring a big knife with you. So you don't have to have one this big, but something with a big blade, because when you're winter camping, when you're summer camping, a lot of times if you want to build a fire, you get squaw wood, which is the branches that are kind of hanging down at the bottom of the trees, fir branches. Well, with when the winter, the snow's piled up, and so all of those branches are often under the snow, and they're just completely saturated, the squaw wood. And so what the best way is if you can find a tree that's like, somewhere around 4 to 8 inches diameter, that's easy to cut down. You get a saw, cut it down. You actually cut it into rounds, and you have, if it's raining, you want to have a tarp to protect the tree as you cut it up into logs. And then you basically take your knife, and then you take a stick, like we could imagine my ice axe is a stick, and you just basically, you put it on a piece of wood, and you take the stick, and you gotta stay. Yeah, if I had a piece of firewood, actually, I can just take one of these phone. Does anybody mind if I
can use that while you want.
So imagine this is a piece of firewood. You can actually, what you can do is split the firewood by taking your knife and just basically hammering right through it. And what you can do too is you can shave off little curlicues or just little strips, of wood that are for kindling. So you can actually, from the same piece of wood, you get into the inner part of the dry part of the wood, you can actually make tinder, multiple sizes of kindling, and fuel out of the same chunk of wood. And so anyway, a large knife and a saw. Let me see if I brought there's a couple different kinds of saws that, if I am going out, like if I'm going snowmobiling, and I'm not going out with the intent of actually building a fire, but I want to have a saw in case I have to as a backup, then I'll bring my little pocket chainsaw. And so it's basically like a chainsaw that you have on a regular chainsaw, but it has two handles, and you can, it's a little slower than my Sven saw. On this particular trip, what I'd like to have is if somebody had a small chainsaw, like a gas powered chainsaw. Just use that because well, it's the part of this, the part of the firewood demonstration that's really important is using the knife and splitting it and actually building the fire. And the part that's like tedious is just cutting the tree up into logs. And anybody can do that, it just takes time. It's not like it's not like there's anything really about it. This is my other saw, and it's pretty cool because you have to be careful you don't lose that in the snow. Put this all together. You guys sound terrible. This Jane's always got a cough though, right?
No, he's been sick.
So anyway, you can make a saw, and this thing's really nice. Pretty light. So anyway, and then for building, Glenn Campbell will be bringing a bunch of snow saws. Those are kind of specialized tools that most people don't have, but if the off chance that somebody actually does have a snow saw, that would be handy to bring. Let's see here. I'll show you that in a minute. So when we get in, I'll cover the things that we use for building the shelters. So if we're doing a snow cave, you're gonna need a snow shovel. And they come in fancier ones than these now, but anyway, this one has a extendable handle so you can stretch it out, and then when you're digging inside of the cave, you want it compact. Get in there and dig with it. But if you're out of the cave, then it's good to have it extended out. I also have this is my old one that has a really long handle, so if you're inside the cave, you want to use sometimes just the shovel itself. And so there's two kinds of trenches. There's a snow cave, which a lot of times you'll build it like imagine I had a wall of snow right here and I flattened it out. The easiest way to do it without getting super wet by tunneling in is you actually just cut a 6-foot door in like this, and then you cut in some bunks, which you want your so imagine just going straight back in with a bunk bed. You want the bunk bed thing, you want a trough right here in the middle that's all the way to the ground, and then you want to be able to sit on this thing and put your feet down in the trough, and the trough carries the cold air out, and you can either come in and dig this whole T, it's called a T shape, so you have a T like this, and you just clear that all the way back into the hill, or if you're in a bank where you run into the rocks or something, you can go in and then go that direction. And so what you can do is you can have a couple of guys, basically you can have a guy in the middle of the trench just pulling stuff out, and you've got two guys clearing over here, and you can just move all that snow out. And then what you do is you cut blocks, and you block all of that up here in, and then your entrance is only the little opening that you have below your bunks. And so the other factor while I'm thinking about it is the worst thing about snow camping is having to go to the bathroom, because basically if you're gonna go out of the snow cave, you gotta put your you're in your you got your wool long johns on, your toasty and your sleeping bag, and you're like, oh man, I gotta go to the bathroom. And you gotta get out of bed, you gotta put your socks on or whatever, you gotta get your boots on, you gotta get your snow pants on, and then you gotta crawl under through this hole, with snow dumping down on you, and try to keep all your long underwear dry so you can get out and go. Now, there are different theories on, like, when I first went snow camping, somebody told me you need to bring like a quart-sized water bottle or something, preferably like go buy a bottle of vitamin water or something, so it's not your Nalgene that you're going to use, but something you're going to throw away when you're done. And you use that and just fill that up if you're a guy in the night. But later, somebody said, why do that? Because what I was doing is I was filling up the water bottle and I was just dumping it into the snow off in the corner, and it'd melt a hole and I'd plug it up with snow. Another guy's like, why not? Why do that? Why not just pee right into the snow, create a hole and plug it up? And so that's what I do now. And I think a woman could probably, if it was a cave with just girls in it, you could probably, in the bottom trench area, probably create a bathroom area and just have a pile of snow that you just back up with, because you're going to melt it all down and then just cover it up. And then you don't have to get out and go out into the night. And the thing is if you never have to get up in the night to go to the bathroom when you're home, because of the cold causes more water to go down to your bladder. You'll have to probably go 3 times if you never get up in the night, and if you're like an older person, you might go 6 times, I don't know, so it's like, it's very inconvenient, if you don't have a way of dealing with it inside of the snow shelter, so anyway, let's see, so this is a snow saw, and basically this is designed to cut through snow and ice. And there's another kind of shelter which we'll learn to build, where you basically, you find a flat piece of snowy area and you just stomp it down pack it down really hard, about the width of your sleeping area and a little bit on the sides, and about however wide your body is. And then you basically dig down and you cut the width that you want to go, you cut these blocks, and you cut them in, cut them. And then you take the shovel, fry them up, and you just take these blocks and you set them up on the side. And then as you get, when you get about 2 block widths down, you have enough to make a tent, basically. You take them and you just keep lining them up along the side, and you start tipping them in. And then you fill in all the cracks with snow. And you've got what's called a ranger trench. That is one way, that's what I've always heard it called, but there's other names for it. And then, you can block it up a little bit more, but you can build it all out of blocks, basically. Or you can build an igloo. And then there's a guy that I met who's from, I think he was from Alberta or something, and up in Canada. And they basically would stomp they just throw a bunch of snow up into a huge mound, and they build these big igloos inside. But they'd hollow it out. They would pack it down first, and then they would dig it all out. And they would end up with these 4 to 6 person igloos, and with a bunch of guys working on it, it's pretty fast, and it's all flat up there, so that was the easiest way to get a snow shelter for them. And it's also more powdery snow, and so they can really cut blocks like we can. So, anyway, if you don't have one of these, don't worry about it, there will be some there. And so, the compass, if you have one, you can bring it. Probably on this trip, it's not going to be that important as long as you're not wandering off somewhere by yourself. Yeah. But, we'll be kind of in an area where everybody's, you can follow the tracks back to where you are. So, cup and bowl. If you guys have been backpacking, you basically need a mess kit, something to eat out of and stuff. And I've got a couple different stoves, but you'll want a stove and fuel. You don't need one for every person, but you probably need one for every 2 or 3 people. And so we'll just get into food. You're gonna want backpacking food, basically your standard backpacking meals. Oatmeal, instant oatmeal for breakfast, whatever you typically have, lots of bars. So the one thing I'll say about eating, and this is like this is important because, I'd heard this like all my life, but it didn't really sink in. And I was watching this video on hypothermia because I was teaching winter survival to Pathfinders a few years for Honors Day. And we watched this really long, 25-minute boring video from the 1970s that kind of these people out on this hike, and it's really slow, and they're gradually progressing into wetter and wetter and colder terrain, and they're getting hypothermia. But it really, the thing the video did really well is showed you how hypothermia sneaks up on you. And one of the things that you're always told is, what are you told about with hypothermia and food? Have you ever heard anything about like hypothermia or in food? Well, if you eat calories, it's like, it creates heat, when you're eating or you're burning food, it's putting off heat. And so when you're going winter camping, that's not the time you want to go on a diet. That's when if you want to break out like, the chocolate bars and, the high fat food and the things like that, the sugar and stuff. You don't want to eat like a bunch of sugar that's going to make you sick, of course, but you want to be eating a lot of calories. And my personality is when I'm going, like I got like blinders on and my head down and I wanna just get a job done, I'll just work, and I'll run out of fuel and I'll be getting cold and I'll be like, well, I'll eat in a minute, I wanna keep getting this, I'm gonna get this thing built, then I'll stop and eat, I don't wanna stop and eat, I just wanna keep going. And so that's my personality. Well, after watching that video and emphasizing the importance of eating regularly and eating small amounts and keeping the calories coming in all the time, I was working away and I was building these ranger trenches, and I was using thin, lightweight gloves. I wasn't using my heavy gloves, just these thin ones. And my hands were warm enough to where I was working hard enough picking up blocks and stuff that my hands were warm enough without my snow gloves on. And I was trying to keep my snow gloves dry. I had like extra pairs, but I was just gonna use as little as I needed to. Well, my hands started getting cold about an hour or two into it, and I remembered the food thing, and so I ate like 3 Clif Bars right then, and within about 10 minutes my hands were warm again in the thin gloves. And so, if you start getting cold, eat something, and the sooner you eat it, like if you just barely start noticing it, if you notice and then you ignore it for like an hour and then you eat, it's gonna take a lot longer for that heat, to start generating. But if you notice it and right away when you're starting to notice it, it'll kick in really quick. So that's my thing on food. If you have somebody sleeping in your shelter that snores, you can bring earplugs. And then
What was that? Sorry.
Ken's anywhere near your the one thing that's good is that in a snow shelter you won't hear anybody outside of your snow shelter because it's so insulated. You'll only hear, if you sleep in it by yourself, it'll just be you, but just whoever's in there with you that'll make noise. So of course you'll want a flashlight, headlamp, that kind of thing, which is standard for backpacking. It's a good idea to have a personal first aid kit with some band-aids and some stuff. We'll have some of the adults will have some bigger first aid kits. So I talked about the sleeping pad. This is I'm always, a lot of times nowadays, people, they don't want the kids carrying pocket knives, and they don't want the kids carrying lighters and all that kind of stuff, This is a good time if your parents will let you, or your Pathfinder leaders will let you to have a lighter, pocket knife, a big huge knife, all that kind of stuff, because it's good. For one thing, when I was a kid growing up, I always carried a lighter everywhere I went because, being prepared. And there were so many times when I'd be out on a water ski trip with my family and they'd have the gas barbecue. Oh, nobody brought matches, I'll whip out my lighter and there we, save the day, whatever. And, my friends and we would hike on the power line hills, and we'd be out there in the rain. We had competitions about getting the fire started in the rain, when we go out hiking. And, we lived in a wet area where forest fire danger was low, but we were always careful. We prepared the area carefully and made sure that we didn't catch the forest on fire. But the good thing is, in the wintertime too, it's a lot harder to burn the forest down this time of year than it is at other times of the year. Let's see, so pocket knife. Okay, now this is another critical thing. So I talked about protecting your stuff, right, from getting wet. So the way I like to do that, I recommend, bring several garbage bags. You'll want a garbage bag, like if your pack is out in the snow, you're gonna want to put a garbage bag. You might want to do two. Put the pack in the garbage bag and put another garbage bag over the top of that pack. Then it's gonna be really dry. But I like to I started getting some of these dry bags finally because I do this enough. But you can bring the little garbage bags that you put in the little waste baskets, and basically, you can organize all your stuff, you know, you can say, I'm gonna make, my hats and my clothes are gonna be in this garbage bag, my underwear and my pants are gonna be in this garbage bag. You can basically put all your stuff in garbage bags, and then when you pull all your stuff out of your pack, and you're like, okay, where's all my stuff? It's all in garbage bags, or it's in some kind of waterproof, could be Ziploc bags too, big gallon, 2 gallon Ziploc bags. If you organize it in, you know, in Ziploc bags, dry bags, garbage bags, then what I like to do is I just, you know, as I'm pulling stuff in and out, I just keep stuff in garbage bags and move it around. And then everything stays dry. Even if I pull it out of my pack, it's in the garbage bag, and then I can put it back in my pack. Or I can have a big garbage bag where I put all my clothes in the little garbage bags, you know, but, and I've started, you know, using some of these types of things for keeping my odds and ends organized. You know, when you've got, you know, notepads and batteries and power banks and pens and stuff, it's nice to be able to not have all that stuff just floating loose in your pack, you know, dumping out on the snow. So yeah, the liberal use of Ziploc and garbage bags and dry bags is the best way to protect your clothing and keep everything dry. So, sunglasses or ski goggles. If it's sun shining out there, or you're out in the snow, the glare can give you snow blindness, which is painful. I mean, I've never gotten like full blown, I'm blind, I can't see where my eyes are supposed to shut, you know, type of thing. But I've gotten enough snow blindness to where my eyes are red, and they're like, kind of like a light sunburn on your eyeball instead of like a really bad sunburn. But it's gravelly and it hurts, and so even a mild amount of not having goggles or sunglasses to protect your eyes is, you know, if we're in the forest and it's cloudy, you know, you probably won't need them, but you should have them, because you don't want to be out in the bright, blinding sun, you know, for, you know, 2 days. And so, let's see, trekking poles are good. They're not necessary, they're like kind of a optional that everybody probably knows. Now, a lot of times, like I bought these at Costco, they're just the cheap ones, but they come with, like in the summertime, I'll take these baskets off, but you want to put the big baskets on them when you're out in the winter, and it depends on whether we have hard pack conditions or powder, but when you're out there snowshoeing, if we have a lot of fresh snow and you got a pack on, you're just going to be, remember when we went up to Mirror Lake, you know, you're just going to sink down with all that weight on, even if you do have snowshoes on. But these help when you got a big old pack on. They're, you know, having extra stability is helpful. And so you'll need cross-country skis or snowshoes. Now, when it comes to boots, like I've got mountain climbing boots, and so that's what I wear, but let's see, where did some of the other boots end up? Does anybody remember?
The orange boots right there?
Yeah, there's these boots. I like to use these for like when I'm around camp, because they got synthetic insulation. Oh, I know they're in there still. Okay, let me right back.
So we have our snowshoes, of course, for anybody that needs snowshoes. So there's no reason for anybody to rent.
Okay.
We just need to figure out which size, you know.
So these are my daughter's snow boots. So if you got something like that, those will work. These are my old Sorels that I've had since like college. And sunglasses now. So that leads me to another thing is gaiters. So gaiters are these things that kind of go around your So if you got your snow pants on, let's say you've got your boots on. They basically, the strap goes under your foot. And what these do is they keep the snow from dumping down inside your boot. Now, a lot of kids that are going on, these are kind of a specialized piece of clothing that not everybody has. And they're kind of spendy for what they are, you know, it's kind of a ripoff. But anyway, a lot of kids that are going out on these trips, they're not necessarily gonna have gaiters. If you got boots like that, you probably don't need gaiters like this kind here. But if you got like these, you know, gaiters are really nice to have. The other option is you bring a roll of duct tape and you duct tape your pant legs to your boots and just duct tape them good. And then when you have to take your boots and your pants off, you're gonna have to undo all that duct tape and then reapply it, you know, the next time you go out. But that's a cheap solution if your parents don't want to spring for, you know, a brand new pair of gaiters, which depending on what kind you get, you know, they can range from probably like $40 to probably $80 or $90. So they're kind of something, if you do it a lot, they're really worth having, but you know, if you're not going to do it again for who knows how long, you know, you might go with the cheap route. Okay, and then, you know, whistle's one of those things. Now, if you have a little plastic sled, you could tow that, but you're probably going to be going up and down a bunch of stuff, and so you're probably going to be dumping your stuff off of it quite a lot. The stove and fuel, it's nice to have a little bit of cordage, like some paracord or something. Probably not absolutely necessary if you don't have any handy, but there'll probably be other people that'll have it in a big group like this. But so other things. So with as far as the layering, you want a good pair of wool socks, the thickest ones you have, and I like to wear these liners underneath of them because it kind of mix the moisture away from my feet. Also, it prevents blisters. It helps with preventing blisters. And I would bring at least 3 pairs of socks with you. So you're going to want, you know, several extra pairs because those will get damp. And then, you know, a pair of like long underwear bottoms and tops, you know, thermal. Now, I've actually ended up buying off of Amazon like wool underwear, you know, and I also have some synthetic underwear. If you're gonna have to wear something cotton, you can probably get by with, you know, wearing your cotton underwear, but if you get wet through, you know, you may have to bring extra pairs of that and be changing that, like probably 2 or 3 or 4 pairs of underwear if you're gonna have that, because if it gets wet, it won't get dry. So anyway, you got your socks, long underwear bottoms. We'll just start from the bottom and work up, and you're gonna want some kind of snow pants, so that are waterproof. Are pretty water resistant. And then on top, you're going to want your long underwear top. You'll probably want, you know, some of these are like fleece or wool top underneath. If you have an insulated coat, you won't need as much on the top part, but I like to have some kind of a parka shell. And then I like to layer up underneath. So, like this down jacket, I probably wouldn't wear when I was snowshoeing, but it'd stay in my pack. And then when I got to camp, if I was getting cold, I'd pull this out and wear this underneath. But fleece jackets, down jackets, and lots of just layers. like this here is a synthetic t-shirt, you know, something like this is a good base layer for a t-shirt. Now, I actually got these for like less than, I think I got these for $35 on Amazon. And these are not, like, if you can pay like $300 for like down pants from like the mountaineering kind. These are a little heavier and they're not as super lofty as some of those ones, but these are for like linemen that work on like power lines and stuff. And I don't winter camp enough to where I want to invest in like really expensive down pants. And so these are so nice though, like when you're walking around camp and you're just hanging out. I mean, I'm almost too hot. Like if I'm wearing these underneath those bibs, I might be almost down to a t-shirt on top if I'm doing any kind of activity. And then if it's really, really cold, if it's cold enough to where I'm wearing that down jacket and these, you know, then you know, it's cold. It's cold out. So now another thing, these are just, some of these types of things are just extra goodies that I have, because if I have to bivvy out at night on a search and I don't have all my stuff, like this is a bivvy sack that's a cheap reflective one, but it's also not it's a reusable one, it's pretty nice. But these are like little down booties, and so if you are really, really cold, you can put these on inside your sleeping bag and your feet get cold. And those at night. Now, the one thing they make now, like they have all these coats that are like got battery power, you know, and they heat up and stuff. I bet they're gonna make some kind of electric blanket to go in your sleeping bag, and then I could maybe get my wife to go snow camping again. But you know, you put this on and you're pretty, if it's cold, you know, you can really stay pretty warm, something like that. But let's see, there's also, have you guys seen the fleece version of these, like the balaclava that you just pull over your head? We got a bunch of stuff. So, winter gloves. It is handy, like if you've Costco always sells these thin gloves every year, but these can be really handy. Most of them have the ability to do the touchscreen on your phone, and so if you have some of these that'll fit inside of mittens or something, if it's really cold and windy, you can pull them out, you can mess around with your phone and not have to get your hands cold. These buff bands are pretty handy and versatile. You can turn them into a balaclava or a hat or a neck warmer, you know. And those are pretty common. There are also, you can get the fleece neck warmers. Let's see if I got any here. So Meadowglade's been doing their winter sports program. Here's another example of like a parka or outer shell. So anyway, I've got my stuff kind of. So this is what kind of like the balaclava I was talking about, but these are designed to go under a helmet with this part of it. So normally if you're going out in the mountains, this part's the same thickness as this part here. But they also make neck warmers where it's just the part that goes around your neck. So you're gonna want a good winter hat of some kind. You know, these kind are good. But you might want a couple of them just to have an extra one in case the other one gets warm or cold or wet. And, so the other thing besides socks, like I'd say you wanna bring a couple pairs of long underwear, but you want at least a couple pairs of gloves too, because you definitely get one of these wet. If you have 3, that's ideal. Have like 3 pairs, but the gloves and the t-shirts, long underwear, and socks are probably the things that are gonna get the wettest. And if all I've got is this shell, I'm gonna be a little bit more careful about how I try to keep it dry. You know, if I'm gonna be building snow shelters and it's snowing out and everything, but I can stay warm in like a long sleeved, long underwear top, I might just opt to get wet with that on and just keep working and eating, staying warm while I'm building the shelter, and then just sacrifice that pair of clothes and keep this thing dry, so that when I have to put it on later, it's not all wet, you know. So we got snow bibs, waterproof shelter jackets, ski gloves, warm hats, couple pair, synthetic or fleece pants or down pants, fleece jacket, wool sweater, or pullover. So something like this that's a fleece would be good. So hiking socks, and then your just personal hygiene, you know, toothpaste, toothbrush, toilet paper. Hand sanitizer is a good idea, because when you go to the bathroom out there, there's not necessarily some place to wash your hands easily, you know, because you're out in the snow. So it's, whereas you might be able to get water to wash your hands, you know, in the summertime, it's harder to do that. Sunscreen, so yeah, same thing with burning your eyeballs, you know, if you know, the sun glare, even up inside your nose and your nostrils can like burn right up in there too. If you little areas you don't even think about putting sunscreen when you're in the snow, it can get up and burn you. And and these things, these hands and toe warmers are nice to bring along too, because you get cold or whatever. So I think that's the bulk of it for the kids. And then if if the adults want to bring some stuff that's a little bit, some extra things, like I will probably bring like a 12-foot tarp in case we need a dry place to build fires and things like that, and some additional things like that. There are other things that like the leaders could bring, bigger first aid kits and things like that. But for the most part, I think for the kids, that list is pretty good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add a couple of the things that I had missing off of this, and then I can just send you guys the list. And I'll probably, the one that the conference had in their info pack, I'll probably send them a few suggestions of some of the things they didn't have on their list. They'll either update it, but I would go off of the list I made because I've cross-referenced them from 3 different places, so should be pretty complete, hopefully. So do you kids have any questions about sleeping? One thing too is, like the first time I probably knew better, but like I went snow camping with my wife and son and another kid, and we actually had one of these below us and one of these above us, and about halfway through the night I noticed our sleeping bags were getting damp on the top, and so we kicked one off on top. But your temptation, because you're in this snow cave and there might be a few drips that you didn't smooth the ceiling out enough, that your temptation is to just cover yourself in plastic, but then you'll end up wetter than you would have if you not put anything in there. So anyway, so I would say with the attitude, like like I've probably, given you guys a lot of, you know, things to be concerned about, you know, when you come out there. But the way I would, say is when you go snow camping, you wanna use caution, but not have like anxiety. You wanna have confidence without foolishness is what I would say. And the reason I've kind of pushed the anxiety side of things, which are, us adults we probably need to be thinking about the confidence side of things a little bit more, because we've experienced more and we're more concerned about you kids and all that. The kids need to often be erring on the side of the caution, because their tendency is just go, you know, right into the, you know, dive into the snow pile and get all their clothes wet. And so,
Snow angels.
yeah, exactly. So you kind of want to have the confidence, because, you know, I think that if you go into these situations with confidence, just your confidence in your brain has the physiological power to generate heat to a certain extent. You know, I mean, your attitude has a lot to do with, you know, has a lot of effect on your physiology. And so if you go into these situations with a heart of fear, you know, you're probably going to be shivering and quaking just from the fear as much as you are from, you know, the cold. And so a lot of people have, you know, gone and survived a lot of stuff without being adequately prepared. So I just say the balance is the caution versus not getting anxious, but you know, confidence without foolishness. So anyway, I think that's it. Anybody else want to add anything? Or?
Can you build a fire inside your snow cave?
If you built a big enough igloo, I think you could. I think you just have to have the walls far enough away from the fire pit area, and then the ceiling tall enough, but you have to, you know, have a hole up in the top. Yeah, I've never done that. I mean, that would be so cool. But I think
Wake up in the middle of the night and have a roof on top of you.
yeah, well, that's the that's the other thing. Like, so yeah, just speaking on the igloo thing, the Sunnyside Club actually built an igloo that they slept 7 guys in it. Last year they had 7 guys inside this thing. But yeah, the one concern, so that's a good thing you brought that up, is you want to sleep inside your snow cave with your shovel, because especially if it's raining out. I had a buddy of mine who's used to be on my SAR team, and he said they were sleeping in these snow caves, and about 2 o'clock in the morning he woke up and he noticed that the ceiling, which was supposed to be up here, was like here. And so they wiggled out and got out. But if the snow cave collapses on you, it can be like being buried in an avalanche. And hopefully the ceiling's thin enough that you can stick your arm through and get out. But you know, that's a claustrophobia anxiety thing that I'm a little concerned about if I'm out, you know, in rainy weather, you know, in a snow cave. But I've been out. I've slept in the snow and the rain before. With those ranger trenches and not having any settling, you know, either too. But the blocks I think are a little more resilient too, because they're packed down so hard. It takes a lot more to water to saturate that. So yeah, the first weekend in April, the 7th and 8th. So we're gonna go up Sabbath morning. And then we'll build all of our stuff, and then spend the night. And then usually, unless it's like really awesome weather, you know, everybody's like, okay, let's get out of here after they eat breakfast. So it's just a one-nighter, which is pretty easy to, you know, most people can tough it out through that. And we're close enough to the car, we're far enough away from the car that it's not easy to get back to the car. It's inconvenient, but which we don't just want people going back to the car just because they feel like it. But
So April what?
May 7th.
Oh, May.
I'm not May 7th, sorry,
April.
March 7th.
Last weekend of your spring break.
March 7th, yeah.
Oh, March 7th.
March 7th, yeah. So it's coming.
3 weeks away.
Yeah, 3 weeks away.
Mm.
It's coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the time you get to April and May, the snow's getting gone. So the last few years, we've had really nice, dry weather, so knock on wood. I don't know if that's good. Hopefully it'll be that way. My goal is, if we can get enough, extra adults helping building shelters, and if there is a chainsaw that we can bring out there, you know, then I could actually get, most of the time, everybody takes all day or the whole afternoon just to build the shelters. And so we don't really get a lot of practice with fire building, but if I was able to get out there and like cut a bunch of wood and like set up a bunch of different stations, then we could actually have kids learn how to do the flint and steel and actually build, you know, getting a fire started. So, but I went out with the 30, I think it's the 304, which is the Air Force search and rescue guys. They're the SEER guys that search, evade, rescue, and escape is what their name stands for. And these guys get dropped off all over the world and have to survive in all kinds of different places. And they train all the Air Force pilots for if they get shot down over enemy territory, for them to be able to survive and get out. So these guys are like, the one guy was bragging, yeah, we can get a fire started in 20 minutes in any kind of weather. And so they were teaching us fire building that Saturday, and so we went up to Mount St. Helens, and it was like one of those atmospheric rivers was coming through, and I mean, we were getting like 4 inches of rain in 24 hours or something, and it was just pouring like, you know, down, and we were out standing in the snow and everything. It's like, okay, this is like the best environment for these guys to show us their stuff, and I think it took them 40 minutes, but they got it going in like 40 minutes, you know, and or less, and so, but they did bring a chainsaw and stuff. They had a tarp set up, and that was, so anyway, some of this stuff, like we had just gone like the week before that with Pathfinders, and I was like, man, if I'd only known all the stuff I'd learned from those guys, you know, I could have taught that to the Pathfinders. But yeah, a lot of it is just the time. So I want to try to get a little bit more fire building in there too, towards the end of the day. So anyway, yeah, if you guys have any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you that weekend, and I'll send you this list if you have other questions. I'm sure Ken will have lots of questions.
How long does it take to move the time?
It's up, I think they're doing it